There's an anime out there that can actually show you exactly how to grow as a person, and it can even show you what traps to avoid along the way. But imagine if you didn't watch it just because of people who say it's mid without ever bothering to explain why. Solo Leveling is an anime that took the world by storm. It was so popular that it made the Crunchyroll app crash when it came out. But with great popularity come very strong opinions. And when I started watching it, I cannot even tell you how scared I was. Because if the comments I read were true, it was either a bad action anime or a badass action anime. But in both cases, it was a basic piece of shit. And in both cases, it was also just an action anime. After a couple of episodes, my weeb senses started tingling so freaking hard and I just didn't know why. What I did know is that the more I watched Solo Leveling, the more the actual truth behind the story appeared. The truth behind the sea of internet opinions. So I'm going to find out if Solo Leveling's action is as incredible as everyone says, but most importantly, if there's more to this anime than just action. Arise, baby! Solo Leveling is the story of Sung Jin-woo, a guy who lives in a world full of portals to alternate dimensions. They're dungeons. And there are also people who are able to destroy them. And they're called hunters. Because these bad boys are filled with monsters that are very, very, very dangerous, especially to Jinwoo. This man is the weakest hunter of all time. He is the anime version of trying to fight the final boss when you turn on the game for the first time. Except that with him, it's every single enemy. I mean, look at this dude struggling with a freaking goblet. Actually, yeah, never mind. That thing would definitely fuck me up. Jinwoo needs to pay for his mother's medical treatment, his sister's education, and for expensive hunter equipment. And on top of that, once a hunter gets their powers, they can never get stronger regardless of how much they train. Loving this main character so far. Okay, but seriously, check this out. One day, Jinwoo goes on a mission with other hunters to destroy one of these portals, and things go completely sideways. The group is trapped in a room with enemies that are absurdly powerful. Some of the hunters are one-shot immediately. Jinwoo is a weak hunter, but he still manages to figure out how everyone can escape. Problem is, someone needs to stay behind for everyone to escape. And Jinwoo is the one who sacrifices himself. A few days later, he wakes up in a hospital bed. Not only is he alive, but he's also completely healthy. And the single most important thing is this. He unlocks a system. Something that looks exactly like a video game menu. And this system makes him the only hunter who can increase their own power. And now, he's on a solo mission. His goal, go from the weakest hunter of all time to an absolute beast so he can help his sister and save his mother. I finish the episode, look around, and realize I've been glued to my screen this entire time. And as soon as I sit down to take a break, my very first thought is, oh my goodness, this was so... okay? Honestly, everything I saw up until now was cool. But the anime where the weakest character starts as the weakest person ever and does something badass that somehow gives him the power and the abilities to become the strongest with hard work and, you know, some determination, doesn't that sound kind of familiar? Yeah. And still, there's just this little something about these first few episodes that stayed in the back of my mind. And something was undeniably making me stare at this screen. I mean, yeah, apart from the fact that this guy somehow survived. And all I wanted was to binge the entire anime right there and then. So I continued watching, thinking that after all, Solo Leveling might be much more interesting than I thought. But to find out if that was true, I had to focus on the one thing everyone was talking about from the second it came out. The action. I get to the scene where Jinwoo goes on a mission with a group of hunters, and one of the people on the mission is a member of the famous Hunters Association. So yeah, a very important guy. But he decides to betray the group. And we discover that this really calm man who was originally there to make sure nothing crazy was going to happen is actually one of the most vile, bloodthirsty, and crazy people you could ever imagine. And Jinwoo has to fight him. At this point, no one knows he can level up, and he is already much stronger than he used to be. The problem is, this time, he's against an exceptional hunter. They're both quick assassin types, but Kang clearly has more experience. And honestly, the fight was awesome, and the choreography was great. But the characters and the story that surrounds the action, those are the things that take action from great to amazing. And to me, they just weren't there. Jinwoo started as the weakest hunter and became someone who could fight on the same level as this Hunter Association guy. A man who's objectively an excellent hunter. And honestly, it just didn't really feel deserved because it happened so fast. But then I saw this. Jinwoo uses a technique that we've never seen before and wins. As the fight ends, Kang says to him, "Your shadow must stretch into some really nasty places."
Oh, he'll probably get as strong as those places are dark.
And it all totally hit me. I've seen so many series where the action part looked incredible, where you could just tell how much effort went into making the fights really beautiful. But the sad thing is, I've rarely seen anime where I actually cared about the characters enough to care about the fights. I'm not gonna lie, when I started Solo Leveling, I was really looking forward to every new fight. The action sequences were always so impressive, the choreography was flawless, and everything about the fights was just awesome. Solo Leveling really has a way to completely absorb you in the action. But what I love even more is that under all that cool stuff, there's actually a real journey. A journey of a man who struggled to get there. In the world of Solo Leveling, some people will be born in incredible circumstances, like S-rank hunters. Most people will not be that lucky. And that's something I am sure many of you can relate to. But Solo Leveling is the story of someone who starts from the bottom to get where they are. Someone who didn't accept their circumstances. To us, it might only take a few episodes, but the truth is, the action always reminded me of where Jinwoo came from and how much he actually worked. And the harder he worked, the better the fights became. And that's exactly why the action of this anime is so goddamn incredible. At this point, this anime showed us that it could do amazing action. But for Solo Leveling to be a masterclass, it needed something more. And because of Jinwoo's journey, I knew exactly where I might find that something. This is the one thing that could take Solo Leveling from a good action anime to something truly special. But it had to happen fast because I was like 3 episodes away from the end. I continue watching and Jinwoo is facing his toughest opponent ever. An opponent that weirdly reminds him of the dungeon he sacrificed himself in. This is Igris, the Blood Red, the knight defending an empty throne. The battle starts, and despite wearing heavy armor, Igris easily keeps up with Jinwoo. And even though he has a massive sword, he swings it like it's nothing. Jinwoo can't do anything to him with his dagger, so he decides to throw hands. Makes total sense to me. But Igris does one of the coolest things I've seen in an anime for a very long time. He throws his weapons away and accepts to throw hands. So far, the fight was awesome, and the fact that Jinwoo got to this point was inspiring. But I was looking at the time and quickly getting to the end of the first season, and I still had no idea if it was actually just inspiring badass action or something more. Because apart from him getting stronger, I couldn't really see any character grow. I felt like completely giving up because I was already so close to the end of the season. I wanted to sit down and accept that I was just wrong. That it was over for Solo Leveling because I only had a few minutes till the end. Jinwoo was unlocking another overpowered ability as I heard the boss of the Hunters Association say, "Who's to say that someone who defies all expectations,
someone strong enough to become a beacon of hope in these dark times, couldn't be born this very moment?"
And when this happened, everything just clicked. Unlike most of the hunters at the beginning of the story, Jinwoo has almost nothing. He gets destroyed in every dungeon, every piece of equipment is too expensive, and he can barely pay for his sister and his mother. He is the weakest hunter of all time. But when he sacrifices himself to save everyone, when instead of running away like the experienced hunters, he chooses to give his life to protect them, is he still the weakest hunter? Because in that moment, he does something that takes more strength than anyone else had. Jinwoo, that guy who had nothing, he's the beacon of hope. Solo Leveling puts such an incredible amount of effort into building his character. But it does it in a way that never feels forced, that never feels like it's trying to shove it down your throat. People who love it call it a badass action anime, and the people who hate it call it a soulless action anime. But I think that nothing could be further from the truth. Solo Leveling is not about incredible fights. It's not about beautiful choreography or even stunning techniques. And even though it's the inspiring story of someone who started from the bottom, I don't think it's about that either. Sure, this anime has all these things, but from the very beginning, Solo Leveling was trying to tell us something even bigger than that. Something that's important to me and hopefully at least some people watching this video. This series shows us that life is never fair and that there will always be greed. But when someone does something selfless, for selfless reasons, they will find strength in helping others. Just like Jinwoo, those are people who will find opportunities no matter what circumstances they were born into. After all, it's thanks to his sacrifice that he got his ability to level up. But here's the thing, he also has to hide. He has to completely isolate himself, he works all the time, and he even kills another person for the first time. And the worst thing is, family that he wanted to help in the first place, he doesn't see them as often as he used to. Despite believing in himself, despite his resilience, and despite every single second of hard work he put in, Jinwoo is never escaping these sacrifices. Because in the world we live in, this journey will always mean sacrifices, regardless of what we want. Those are sacrifices that can completely change a person. And those are the kind of sacrifices that many of you probably had to make at some point in your life. I mean, I hope not the killing one, obviously, but you know what I mean. So the beauty of soul leveling is not only that it inspires us, but it also warns us. It warns us about the journey to become stronger. To me, the scariest part about finishing the first season is that Jinwoo is not the same guy who sacrificed himself in the beginning. Sure, he never forgets that he needs to help other people, but he just feels like a different person, like something inside him is slowly breaking. I think that a lot of us always feel like we need to prove ourselves to everyone, to prove ourselves to people who, ironically, and I am saying this from the bottom of my heart, usually don't care. How many times have you been online and thought something like, I want to look better, I want to make more money, or I want this new thing? If you're anything like me, the answer is probably all the time. But how many times have you thought about other people? Maybe people that are close to you, or people who actually really care about you. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that having ambition and taking care of yourself is bad. I mean, even in soul leveling, Jinwoo had to do that to help his family. But personally, when I look back at my life, I want to feel like I gave something to the people around me. I want to know that I spent enough time with the people I love and care about. And in a weird way, I guess, soul leveling gives me hope. It makes me feel like I have the power to do that. To do both these things, actually. That I can want to achieve a bunch of things so I can be better for myself, for society, and for the people around me. And maybe spend as much time with them as I can. And honestly, I know that it can be difficult. But at least, it makes me feel that I can try. Soul leveling feels really special to me, because it says something that means a lot. It's the kind of anime that anyone can appreciate just for how awesome it is, but it's also an anime that says something really important. But there's another anime that might say something even more important. An anime made by the director of Jujutsu Kaisen?